Okay, so the stitch that I want to show you is the blanket stitch, and depending on your machine, you may have more than one blanket stitch on your chart. Okay, the one that I'm going to use is this first one. The main differences between these, you can see some are more spaced out, some have a very, very narrow top here, which means it's only stitched once. Generally speaking, if you've got stitches on your machine and they are in bold, it means that they're stitched twice, which makes it much thicker stitch. And the nice thing about that with the blanket stitch is it will make it almost look like it's a hand done blanket stitch, but obviously it will be much, much quicker. So the key to this is the lining up of where to actually line up your foot. This foot here, and you should have with your machine what is called a satin stitch or an applique foot. Okay, and I'm trying to hold it up so you can see it because it's quite clear. It's probably better down there actually. As you can see, it's a clear foot, so that means the vision is much, much better on it. What I've also got is there's a little red arrow here that's going to show me the center of the stitch, and then there's a gap in the foot here which is going to show me where the top of the stitch is. Okay, so what I'm going to try and do is line up that gap with the edge of my applique shape as I go round, because if you think in terms of that pen, the blanket stitch being teeth and gums, so if I do this, so these are the gums and these are the teeth going down. Okay, so I want the gums to go around this edge here and then the teeth to go over far enough that they're actually going to go onto your applique shape because it's holding it in place. Okay, so sometimes it will take you a couple of little goes, and what I will tend to do is use the up down button on my machine, or if you don't have one of those, if you're on a mechanical machine, then just crank the flywheel at the side and just play out one whole stitch so that you can see exactly where things are starting and finishing. Now if I drop the presser foot, you'll notice I'm going to start on the straightest edge so that I can actually sort of see where I'm going. Okay, and what would help is if I actually put the stitch on. So hang on, because it's behind the camera. So there we go, stitch 35. On this machine it actually tells me to put that F foot on. Some machines do that, they'll actually tell you. And do bear in mind that, like with any fancy stitch, you can alter the stitch width and the stitch length, and sometimes when you're on small projects or something, it's well worth playing around with the stitches like this, because you can get a much better finish for whatever particular thing you're doing. So if you were doing a smaller shape, for example, you might want it to be a slightly smaller stitch, so you might want to take the width down on that. Okay, so if I start it running, and like I say, I'm just going to do 1 or 2 stitches. Let's take the speed right down because I want you to be able to see what it's doing. So it's going to do a few stitches, and then can you see it just jumps over onto the pink. So it's gone from the green to the pink, and then it's gone back again, and it's going forwards and backwards and then over onto the pink. So it's almost like a little kind of waltz, if you like. So forwards, backwards, forwards, over, forwards, backwards. And with all these stitches, it's worth watching it really slowly so that you can actually see how that stitch is going to play out and how it's lining up as well. I'm a little bit far back from it here because I've got the camera in the way, so I can see already I'm probably not exactly on the line. I'd normally be a lot closer as I'm doing it, but what I'm doing is just watching that go round. I'm just going to speed this up a bit, or we're going to be here all day. There we go, because I want to get to the corner. Now you can see I'm holding this quite firmly. As I approach that corner, I'm putting pressure on my fingers there to turn it slightly. When I feel I can't, because I'm trying to keep that line coming in there. So when I lose that line that's coming in here, for example, then what I need to do then is lift the presser foot only very slightly, and then very, very slightly, you can see that was literally a tiniest bit, move the fabric underneath, and then I might only do another 1 or 2 stitches into that curve. I'm stopped here and it's on the pink, but I want the needle to be back onto the green before I lift that presser foot and move it, because that's going to leave me less jumps in this stitching as it goes round. So with a lot of machines, especially computerized ones, if you press the needle down and you start with the needle down when you start sewing, it will finish with the needle down. Some of them can actually be preset, so they will always stop with the needle down, and if your machine can do that, it will be in your instruction book, and it's well worth doing, because it's the most useful thing to have on, especially with things like this. I know I'm on the wrong side. I want to now come back, so I'm just going to do 1 stitch to get me back over. So I'm back over now onto the green, so I can now lift and turn. Okay, and like I say, it was only a tiny bit as I've gone round, and then another couple of stitches, and I'm starting to lose it again. Now this time it's stopped in the right place, so I don't need to adjust it. It's already on the outside edge. So the rule of thumb is, if you're on the outside edge of a curve, and again I'm going to draw it for you, so a curve like this, and you're coming round, then you want to stop on, don't know how to get to this without the camera in the way, then you want to stop here, okay, on the outside edge. If you're on an inside curve, then I would stop here inside with the teeth and then move it and go round. Okay, so like I say, I'm just going to go around here, and on this curve, like I say, I'm putting a lot of pressure on here, so I'm almost making it pivot as it's going round. But look, I can see now it's starting to deform the fabric. As soon as it starts doing that, then you lift and turn, okay? Because otherwise what will happen is you'll completely stretch that fabric out, and it will look really puckered. I'll go back, forward, so I know that the next stitch is going to go over to the inside. Okay, and then I'm going to go down into the corner. Now this corner here, because it's an inside corner, I'm going to go past it, if you like, with the stitching, and then down, and this time I've turned it so that I'm now coming back up this slope here, but my next stitch will go across. Oops, there you go. It's gone across and onto that outside edge, so my needle is now back in line here, okay, and then we can go around again. If you have speed control, then use a really slow speed on this. There's nothing to be gained by going really, really fast, missing it all, and then having to redo it. Okay, so let me carry on round. Like I say, I'm speeding this up, and I can see there's a couple of bits that I've missed, which I wouldn't normally miss. But I just want to get to the end, because I'm aware that you can't necessarily see very well with stitching. So I'm back on the straight, which is the easy bit. something like this is well worth practicing, especially if you've got a new machine, because I always think that that what's going to happen is that it just lets you practice. Okay, so oops, it's in front of the light of the camera, so there you go, you can see all the way around. But like I say, it's such a pretty stitch to use. I'm sorry, that lighting is really not very good. Such a pretty stitch to use, and it does definitely look quite hand done, but a darn sight quicker. So an entire quilt or cushion cover or something with lots of little hearts stitched on it would look really cute, or if you're doing bunting or something like that. Okay, so that's the blanket stitch.